welcome you to another live edition of the Sports Box, brought to you by our sponsor, Showcase Sports in Hamilton. Showcase Sports for the elite athlete. And by our friends over at CrowdPlay. Download the free CrowdPlay app today and check them out at www.crowdplayapp.com for details. Ladies and gentlemen, it's showtime.
Well, good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the NFL Football Talk. That's right. This is Highly Opinionated, and I am Hamilton Mike Galleta, along with my partner in crime, Brian, the Ranger Attard. And yes, folks, we are leading into 2 weeks from the draft. Brian,
listen, this time of year, it dominates the show, and I love it because there's so much to talk about, and stuff's happening all the time.
Yep.
And we have a wonderful group of guys who love to talk football with us. We have a couple of those guys on tonight. We'll bring Hav on in just a minute to talk a little Packers. Got you talking the Bucks. Got Joe Thompson back on to talk Seattle. A lot of stuff. And listen, the draft's coming up. That's going to be a fun week. Ton of coverage.
Yep.
It's just going to be a blast.
And mixing it all in next week, folks. Tuesday night, our show will be moved to 7:30 because we will have on the show Flyers longtime defenseman Chris Therien. So looking forward to that too as well. So
we'll probably do two that night because we still have the rest of the draft coverage.
Yep.
So
we'll be here for all your needs. So before we get to that, though, Brian will give you a little bit of this.
3 people you need to speak to. Number one, Dave Birnbaum, Remax Community. If you're in South Jersey, you need to buy, you need to sell, you need to rent. Call Dave. Dave's our boy. Numbers on the Facebook page. Number two, the CrowdPlay app. It is free to download, free to play. And if you use our code THEBOX, you get 10 free points to start. And that's how many points I still have. I have not gotten a single point because I suck at it. But it's hard, but it's fun. Check that out. And then last but not least, if you are also in Hamilton, New Jersey, Showcase Sports, Bellevue Avenue, 12th Street. They are moving actually to the White Horse Pike sooner than later. We're doing a show there. All your sporting goods needs, let them know we sent you.
Absolutely.
Without further ado, your favorite and mine, the preeminent Packers fan in all of New Jersey, at least the only one that I know, so we can only go by what we know. Sportsbox host Ryan Hovermale joins the show. Hav!
Whoa, he's alive.
How is everybody? Good to be back on.
Some fresh Packers gear. It's always a good.
Nah, this is last year's gear, but you know. I only wore it for this was only the last couple of weeks, so it's kind of fresh, I guess you would say.
Fair enough.
It's always fresh, so it's Packers gear.
Right.
Sure.
You're always buying this, buying that. Weren't you buying a Devontae Adams signed pylon today?
Yeah, I tried to, and then when I went to order it, it said there was a waiting list for it.
All right.
So I'm not waiting for a signed pylon. I'll wait for a signed helmet or jersey. So I just did it out.
Right. Green Bay Packers, 13-3, won the NFC North. They did lose in the championship game at home to the Buccaneers. They finished strong, though. They won 6 straight to end the year. Very similar season to the year from before. So Matt LaFleur has had 2 years in Green Bay, and they've been very similar. They've been 13-3 with a title game loss. But you can't really discount the fact that they've, relatively been very successful, especially from where they came from. Your thoughts, temperature of the fan base on LaFleur, given the fact that there has been a lot of regular season success, but they have not been able to get over that hump in the NFC Championship game, at least so far.
Well, I mean, I think my temperature on LaFleur is I love him. I think he's a great offensive mind. I think he is an excellent personnel guy. I think that, top to bottom, I think Green Bay was the most talented team in football last year. I think where they're at now and where LaFleur is going, he's not on a hot seat by any means, but where the seat starts to get a little bit warmer now is, okay, the last 2 years, what was clearly the problem was a defense that was super talented, top 5 talent, and you consistently couldn't get it done. So you get rid of the defensive coordinator. You're bringing some of the draft picks along that you've taken the last 2 years, presumably going to take probably 3-4 more defenders in this year's draft, if I had to guess. So I think that he's going to be a lot more on the warm seat, because at this point now it's all his staff. There's, Pettin's gone. He picked Joe Barry, so this is the guy now. We're going to see what they can do. But as far as I'm concerned, I think that LaFleur is one of the best coaches in the league, period, but definitely one of the best young coaches.
So Javi, talk about him being a great coach, and I was going to get to that. But that's fine, and I agree. I think he's proven he's one of the better coaches in the league right now with some of his decisions and things to that effect. Do you think, and we all went back to this with the draft, with them moving up to get Jordan Love, do you think the way this season kind of panned out near the end, especially against the Bucs, would they have gone better with maybe moved up and got a receiver to help out Aaron Rodgers? Because the year before, I mean, you guys were right there as well. So do you think they could have got him a little bit more help, a receiver, or are you happy in the way they went in the draft?
Well, this has been an argument in a group chat that I'm in for a year. I think if you go back and you look at where Green Bay could have possibly moved up in the draft, and you look at the players that would have been there, none of them would have put up better numbers than Alan Lazard or any of the guys basically that were the Packers' second and third receivers. MVS even, Valdez-Scantling. These guys put up good enough numbers that the wide receiver that you moved up and used draft capital on and traded picks for wouldn't have been a huge upgrade over what you had based on their seasons that they had with the other team. I think there's an argument to be made that they possibly could have moved up a couple spots or stay where they were and maybe taken, an interior defensive lineman somewhere. I think Lowry and Lancaster really, really, really struggled this year, stopping the run, getting any kind of pressure on the quarterback. And, Kenny Clark is, again, in my mind, a top 3 defensive tackle in the league. And that's even considering the fact that he's being doubled and tripled because teams know they only need one guy to block the others. It's just, it is what it is. And I think Green Bay, looking back, I obviously think that maybe they would have gone somewhere on the defensive line or maybe even a corner, because as we saw in the NFC Championship game, a lot of people blame Kevin King for what happened. It wasn't his fault. He's not that good. He's an okay player.
I've said that once or
you
twice.
You can't put a guy that's an okay player. I'm fine with him being resigned, by the way, but you can't put that guy on a number 1 wide receiver, and the Bucs happen to have 3 of them. You can't do it. And that's where I think that maybe having maybe a first round corner in that situation would have helped. But other than that, there's not much that they could. There's a lot they could have done, but in the draft, I didn't really have that big a problem with it. I think Rodgers is getting older. He obviously has proven that he's still, in my mind, the best quarterback in football. When you're talking about athletic ability and pure quarterback talent, you can make some arguments for some other guys, but over the course of his career, he's been just ridiculous. But as far as the draft goes, I think that bringing Jordan Love in and keeping him on the sidelines for 2 or 3 years, going the Aaron Rodgers route isn't the worst thing in the world, especially when you're building a team that's very young, very deep, and very talented. Hopefully he could take over in 2-3 years, whatever it is, and be successful.
Well, I think, and look, I speak for myself in this. We've gone at it many a time over this topic, probably ad nauseum, frankly. But I think it's because Rodgers is who he is, and he's still producing at this level at this age. And I think that that's where a lot of the did you really need a quarterback now comes in.
Right.
So
right.
Third, I mean, he won the MVP of the league. So
going away, it wasn't even close.
Right. 37 years old. Again, they did draft Jordan Love last year with a high pick, right? But they had the number 1 scoring offense in all of football, just under 32 points a game.
Mm-hmm.
They're kind of in this weird purgatory in that, how long is he going to stay? And is he the one that dictates that? Because now you do have this investment in this player. Whatever he turns into at this point, I don't really think is on trial right now. But for better or for worse, they cast that shot. They are looking towards the future and the post-Rodgers era. But I think back to Brady in New England, in that, they kept drafting guys like a Ryan Mallett and a Jimmy Garoppolo, and these were second round picks, but they weren't really like, it was always like, oh, is this the next one? And then it just never materialized because he was who he was. Mm-hmm. And I don't think I've seen anything out of Aaron Rodgers that says he's slowing down at all. In fact, I think he's getting better, as crazy as that sounds. From your vantage point, given, again, the investment in Love, given the contract, how long do you see this going? And can you see him wear another jersey before he hangs it up the same way Brady did?
I mean, I eventually think he's 100% going to wear a different jersey. Now, when that is, I'm not sure. But going back to your point, as far as him slowing down, remember there was that 2, even 3 year span where, listen, he was still putting up good numbers. Don't get me wrong; they were still very solid, top 10 QB numbers. But they were numbers that, from where Rodgers were steadily declining. Matt LaFleur comes along and all of a sudden reinvigorates a little bit. There's a new offense and all that kind of stuff. We talked about this earlier a little bit. You see, 2 years ago, he had a pretty good year. The Packers were 13-3, but there was a lot of smoke and mirrors there. There was a lot of luck that went into that. A lot of turnovers caused by the defense. Some weird things went their way. Then all of a sudden this year, you see the offense take another step. You see a lot of LaFleur's game plans and schemes really start to work, and that's where Rodgers took off. I don't think that, that Gutekunst and even LaFleur to a point were prepared for that. I think they saw a guy who is still very serviceable, but was starting the downside of his career, and they figured, well, let's get a guy in here now. Let's put him behind Rodgers for 2 years. And then let's cut Rodgers loose or trade him or do whatever. Very much the same way that they did with Favre, but Favre just retired. I think that's really the plan that they had. The way that Rodgers played last year obviously threw a complete wrench into it. You have a guy, and again, who's one of the most talented quarterbacks to ever play, now playing at the highest level of his career at 37 years old. Now, all of a sudden, you have to start taking stock of certain things. I follow, obviously, all the Packers beat writers on Twitter, except the one that blocked me for some reason. I must have said something very mean to him. Total dork. I don't even remember his name, but what a loser. And they're making some very cogent arguments that you could, after this year, see number 17 and number 12 in different uniforms. And, the arguments, a lot of them are just based on age and the amount of money that they're going to cost. You have Jair Alexander, who's going to require a lot of money. And I think that everybody would agree that corner in this NFL is where you want to dump a ton of money into. So do you dump that money into a 20-something, an early 20-something-year-old stud corner who, again, in my mind, has the potential to be the best in the league? He does everything, and he's still young, and knock on wood, he's been pretty healthy. Or do you give a 30-year-old Devontae Adams that 3 to 4 year huge wide receiver deal? That's going to be a question. And then you have Jordan Love coming up. So do you continue to block him and continue to give the football to Aaron Rodgers? Or do you try to get some draft capital and some players in return for Rodgers? And I think there's just a lot of things that are going on right now that they didn't expect, that Rodgers kind of forced on them with his play last year.
So staying with the offense, Hav, I want to address the running back situation, because this year coming in, we talk about AJ Dillon, had a nice year, didn't carry the ball, the heavy load of it, obviously, of Aaron Jones, but we were under the assumption that AJ Dillon was brought in here to be the heir apparent to Aaron Jones with his contract up, and going to Brian's theory that you never really load up and pay great money to a running back in certain situations. I think Derrick Henry should have got the money, but in this case, you could make a deal for Aaron Jones, needed the money too. But my question to you is, AJ Dillon was drafted, like I said, high enough to come in here to be the next guy, I think. What's your opinion on why they kept Aaron Jones for that reason?
Yeah, I mean, again, not to reiterate the point I just made, but I think that the way that Aaron Jones played again this year forced their hand. I do not think that Gutekunst and Mark Murphy and Russ Ball and LaFleur and all those guys, I genuinely don't think they saw another big year coming from Aaron Jones the way they did 2 years ago. And he gave it to you again. And I think what he proved is that he is such a valuable tool. You can't even call him a running back really at this point because he does so much in the pass game. He does so. He's for his size, he's a very good pass protector. He's smart. He gets it. He knows what's going on. And I think the other thing is with Aaron Jones and the way that LaFleur wants to run his offense, Aaron Jones doesn't need 25, 30 carries like a Derrick Henry, like an Adrian Peterson back in the day. You can give him 15 touches a game, and he'll give you 160 yards and 3 touchdowns from it. I thought that for me, I thought A.J. Dillon was going to be the running back moving forward. I thought that they would do the opposite. I thought they'd let Jones walk. I thought they'd sign Jamal Williams to a cheaper deal and move forward with those two. That being said, I didn't love the deal. I don't really like giving running backs that second contract. However, the way that LaFleur uses Jones, he doesn't have the touches of these other big-time running backs that are coming into the second contract. And that's just because the way LaFleur's offense is. He schemes different things. He likes to get backup running backs 10 to 15 touches a game. A lot of times you'll see that that Aaron Jones and his backup have almost the same amount of work. So I think, I talked to actually one of the other guys, Brian Hess, about it. He said, what am I going to do with Dillon as my keeper? Fantasy-wise, I still think A.J. Dillon holds a ton of value, in at least the fantasy world. And I think it'll be even more important to Green Bay to spell Aaron Jones and to give you those tough yards.
What I think is interesting about Jones is, again, late round pick. And I love that. To me, it's a position that you can go find talent late in drafts. I mean, even if it's a second round pick, like a guy like Dillon was, it's just, you're not putting in that premium pick that you can't get something else with. Really, I think ever since the Zeke contract, for better or for worse, running backs are getting paid, but they're not getting paid that. Like that almost seemed like the top. Like this is a deal very similar to the one that Derrick Henry got. And it's hard to say in a league where Derrick Henry's, getting the rushing title. Well, it's hard to say you want more than Derrick Henry. So it's understandable why he got the money that he did. I was kind of surprised he gave him the money just for the same reasons that you explained. Is it felt like they were rolling it over, putting that money elsewhere, like a guy like Jair Alexander. And I wanted to talk about the defense there because it doesn't get enough play because of the stars they have on the offensive side of the ball. They've always been this, this team, this heavy offense as long as Rodgers has been there, and really the 5 years prior to that. Their points against were up just a little bit from 19 to 20. It was around 20 points 2 years ago. It was about 23 a year ago. So not like a lot, but about a field goal difference in the game. You brought up Alexander. I think he is starting to get that national attention as that elite corner, somebody who's going to get that big check coming around. But you were very critical of Mike Pettin and the defensive coordinating job that he was doing, and he's no longer there. What is your thought on the defense overall, given the fact that I do think it's going to start costing them more to maintain?
100%. Yeah, well, I mean, you're talking – listen – that defense last year, all told, and they really, really struggled in that first half of the NFC Championship very badly. Couldn't really get stops when they needed to. And then they turned it around in the second half, and number 12 was who came up short. But I think that they were top 10 unit last year. I think they ended up at number 8 in total defense. And that's despite a guy who decided to play man-to-man defense on the last play of the half. And by the way, I did a lot of thinking about that, and there is no way that Tom Brady and Bruce Arians, even though I don't think Bruce Arians really coached that team at all.
I agree.
And anybody else who was running that offense, I truly believe that they looked at enough film and they were good. They came out to punt. I think they called the timeout because they said, hey, do you remember in film watching Green Bay on similar situations like this going man across? And I think they said, we can go after number 20 with anybody essentially, and he can get behind him and out jump him. I truly believe that's what happened there. So I think that with him gone, a better scheme, it might be more of a zone scheme, or almost like what you call in basketball a box and one, where everyone plays zone except the all-world number 23 who can pretty much do whatever the hell he wants. I think you're going to see a much different defense. They've already talked about being more aggressive. They've already talked about trying to go after the football a little bit more. But with that, as you said, Brian, this is a young defense. They were all drafted around the same time. That's great. They're young, but what that also means is checks come due. And, there's going to be, it's going to.
I know the feeling. It's
right.
Coming.
And they already paid the defensive tackle. They pretty much paid Za'Darius, and they're definitely going to extend him and give him more money. And Jair's the next guy. Now, you have Amos, who's signed to a deal, who's one of the most underrated safeties in football, by the way. He shows up week in and week out, does his job as good or better than anybody else. And then you have Savage, who, again, in my mind, is one of the best young safeties in football. In a couple of years, his check's going to come due. So from a defensive perspective, from an overall team perspective, they have that 2 to 3 year window where you really need to get it done. And I think that's why, among other reasons, that Pettine was let go, because the front office realizes that we have 2 to 3 years with this defense the way that it is, that we have drafted for the last 6 years to finally get here. We have maybe 2-3 years left of Aaron Rodgers. This is the time. And that's just what it is.
So, Hob, I'm going to take care of the defensive side of the ball. Like you said, the team ended up 8th this year, which is pretty darn good. I thought they were a little bit better than that, but 8 I think was solid from the previous year. That they struggled in different spots. Where do you think the Packers excel on defense in the way of depth? I mean, do you think it's their secondary? Do you think it's more linebackers or D-line?
I think right now this is going to sound weird to say, but I think it's very clearly the secondary. That being said, they don't have that legit number 2 corner right now. They re-signed Kevin King. Your safeties are excellent, in my opinion. Again, and take this for what it is, because I'm wearing the Green Bay gear. I think they're the best safety duo in football, and I don't really think that that you can really argue against that. They're one of the best. In my opinion, they're best, but I mean, you could put them anywhere from 1 to 3, and you can make an argument for it. They're very solid on the back end. We talked about Jair Alexander already. All world. He can tackle, he can cover, he can play zone. The kid is outstanding. He's just an outstanding player. The problem is the other side of football. You have Kevin King, who is an okay player. But when you have teams now that go 3 wide receivers deep, legit 3 wide receivers, he ends up covering what would be a number 1 on another team, and he can't do it. And that's one thing that Mike Pettine wasn't able to see and to adjust to. Continue to roll man-to-man coverage out there. So I think that the secondary is by far their deepest. They have Josh Jackson, they have Shandon Sullivan, Will Redmond, some of these young players that are very good. By the way, Shandon Sullivan was one of the highest graded corners in football. He's a very, very good slot corner. Problem is he can't go to the outside. So you needed that other outside corner. And that's where, going back, I think that they would have done well to maybe take one in the draft or try to get one in free agency. But very clearly to me, that's the deepest part of that defense.
The Chargers fans on the team were very excited about adding Corey Linsley to their offensive line. So he's a big loss for them. They also lost Christian Kirksey to Houston. Do you look, give the Packers full credit. I mean, I think of the teams that you look at and say, they just draft well most of the time. I mean, they're a team that obviously does draft well. And it's not as if they're left, in the cold losing these players, but obviously you lose bigger name players, it's going to impact your roster. I mean, do you think that they're set up where this is not going to have a huge impact, or will they feel the loss of Linsley and Kirksey?
I think you're going to feel the loss of Linsley a lot more than Kirksey. I think Kirksey was, if Kamal Martin would have been healthy the entire year, I think Kirksey would have lost his job to him anyway. Him and Chris Barnes, these young guys that they just drafted. I mean, Chris Barnes was, I think, undrafted. And Kamal Martin, I think a fifth rounder out of Minnesota. These guys came on and they proved that they could play football. And again, if both were able to really stay healthy the whole year, you had Martin go down for a long time, and then Barnes was playing with a club this big on his hand, and he really couldn't do much. So I liked Kirksey as a player, but I don't think he'll be missed really at all. I think Barnes and Martin are going to be more than fine there. Very, very good young players that are just going to get better as they learn the NFL game. But I think what was the other position we were talking about? It was Lindsley. I think Lindsley is definitely a bigger loss, just because the guy who's calling the coverages, who's calling where the tackles are sliding, who's picking up who, where's the blitzer, where's the Mike, where's the Will, at a Pro Bowl level, nonetheless, is going to hurt. That being said, and I've said this before, I think Green Bay is one of the most well-equipped teams in the NFL to lose a guy like that and not miss a beat. Elton Jenkins, who is, and another thing we've talked about, in my mind, the best interior offensive lineman in the NFL, because he can play 3, 4, he could play every position. He literally did last year. I don't think it's ideal that he would move to center, but if he has to, he can. John Runyon came in and was able to really, really play well in his time that he played guard. So you'd hope that he can. I think the thing that Green Bay would want would be for John Runyon to set guard and move Lucas Patrick over to center. Lucas Patrick is another excellent spot starter. And I think with how strong they are across the line, I think he would do more than fine at center. All told, I don't think they're really, really going to miss either of them, but Corey Lindsley, the loss of Corey Lindsley will be felt a lot more in the beginning than Kirksey.
And then the last question here, obviously they're picking 29th. You had a good year if you're picking in the low 20s, right? So, or the high 20s, I should say. Look, Devontae Adams had a monster year last year. Oddly enough, though, I think it was actually statistically very similar to 2018, but they didn't really get the play, I think, that this year did for whatever reason. I don't know that there's anything, and we go back to the Jordan Love pick, and I can sit here and say they could have drafted anything. You could say, well, draft what? I'm like, well, I don't really know, because they didn't really have a lot of openings anyway, and we can have that debate back and forth, and we do. And they walk into this draft. I really don't think there's anything that you can say, wow, they really have this massive hole at this specific place. So it's an advantageous spot. We both agree they're probably not going to take a quarterback this year. So right. Where do you see them looking at 29? Is this a year that they go BPA, that they maybe trade back a little bit? Like what's just your read on what they're looking at in the spot that they're in? Could that be a spot for a guy like Caleb Farley, who's having his medicals are dropping? You mentioned not having that second corner. Could they be a team that because they're set up well can take the shot on a higher level talent who's dropping due to that reason?
I think you hit the nail on the head. I think this year more than any other, although it is the Gutekunst way, is to go BPA. But this year, I think it's BPA with a cap. I think that they are looking at the best wide receiver or best corner that's going to be on the board at 29 if they don't move up. I just think that those are the two areas that they know they're lacking a little bit. I would personally absolutely love to see Caleb Farley fall. I think there's a lot of bullshit there. I think people are trying to get him to fall because a ton of teams see the talent and want him to fall. I think he's going before.
It's not Miles Jack where he went from top 5 to the second round.
Exactly. I think I think that there's a lot of lip service there. I still see him being gone by 29. Guys that I know are floating around. They've talked to Patrick Surtain a couple of times now. They had 2 interviews with him. I know they like Greg Newsome. A little bit later on, I know they love Benjamin St. Juste from Minnesota. By the way, these are all guys that I love too. I'm a fan of the bigger athletic free corner than I am, the smaller guys who tend to rely on instincts a little bit more. But there's also guys out there. Rondale Moore his name keeps coming up. There's some Kadarius Toney. If he were to fall, these wide receivers that, Green Bay's not looking for another number one big guy. They're looking for a slot gadget kind of guy, because in the LaFleur offense, you need that guy. And you saw that last year. They tried Tavon Austin. They tried Tyler Ervin. And neither of them really gave you that huge boost. So I think when it comes down to it, they're going to read the board and they're going to say, who's there that's highest on our board? Don't care if he's a corner or a wide receiver, who's the highest guy, and that's what they're going to take. I personally hope it's a corner. I hope it's Farley. I hope it's Newsome. One of those guys. Melifonwu, I think, is the other. Ifthal Melifonwu is another guy that falls into a lot of what Green Bay likes. If those guys are there, I think that's where they go.
Anthony Morales, that's a luxury pick. Quick says, Moore or Toney would be great compliments to Adams. And I guess my last point I'll make is we had a discussion around, what receiver could the Packers have taken last year at the Love pick that would have made an impact. And I said, well, I don't really know, but they could have been in the market for an Odell or a Hopkins. Again, hypothetical. You don't even know if they were discussing that. Have you changed on that, where now there's somebody at 29 or in that vicinity that you think, even as a rookie, could come in and be that number two? Because that's, I have this sinking feeling, and I hope that I'm wrong. I have nothing against Green Bay, even though they tend to beat the Cowboys in the playoffs every time they play.
Sure.
That when Aaron Rodgers goes, it's going to fall off a cliff. I know you're going to tell me that I'm wrong, and we can disagree on that. We normally do. That's just the thought that I have, is that he's so good. He really, really is, that once he goes, the odds of it falling off a cliff are really high. And that's why I'm well, then take quarterback later. Don't even worry about it. Just my view on it. But are you comfortable if they bring in a rookie at wide receiver that he can be the number two from the jump and not be a 2 to 3 year guy that you have to build up to a period of time where Rodgers might not even be there?
I think that it all depends on what kind of player you're looking for to be the quote unquote two. So this guy might not line up like a true number two, but if you're talking production, I've been on this guy since I watched, I think, my third Florida game. I think Kadarius Toney could be a huge player for the Packers. I don't think he falls that far. I think he's going to go a lot higher than people think. That kid is a run after the catch monster. He's got very good hands. He's very strong. He doesn't get enough credit for how strong he is. You watch some film on him, and some of the tackles this kid breaks, and some of his moves in the open field are just incredible. And you add to that 4.4 speed, and not only long speed, but that quickness in and out of breaks, quick spin moves, quick little, foot in the ground and go. I think that, in the LaFleur offense, he could have just a monster impact on everybody, and really free up a lot of things in that offense. Again, I don't think he'll be there, but if you were looking for a guy to be that legit too, I think Toney, and I think to a lesser degree, it's only because Rondale Moore's injuries kind of concern me a little bit. Anybody who's hurt in college, it's scary to me, because guess what? They're bigger, stronger, and faster in the NFL. But I think that Moore could do it as well if he stays healthy.
Well, Hob, I got to thank you from Buccaneer Nation for letting us beat you and move on to the Super Bowl. That's number 2 for me, so I appreciate that.
Nice.
And yeah, I know it wasn't easy, but I appreciate it. So.
Yeah, I mean, we didn't really get a chance to talk much about it. I think, as I kind of said, the first half was the defense. They couldn't get a stop. They couldn't do anything. And they were still in the game. Then in the second half, you had Brady just rattled and throwing the ball God knows where. And, that last interception, I remember looking over at my father and saying, here it is. Number 12 is going to do what number 12 does, take him right down the field and score a touchdown. and he had 3 chances at it.
Yeah.
I mean,
so
I don't remember the Buccaneers scoring really. I know they scored in the second half, but I don't remember them scoring.
what are your thoughts on the field goal?
You know what? I think that gets blown out of proportion. If Rodgers runs the play before, he scores a touchdown, and he's admitted as much. There was nobody there. I think I don't want to say the moment got to Rodgers, but something happened that second half because he was given 3, arguably 4 chances where the Buccaneers did nothing offensively. Brady looked terrible. He looked rattled. He was throwing interceptions. He's throwing bad completions, and Rodgers just couldn't get it done. As far as the field goal, it was, if I remember, it was 4th and 10. So you had time. You had timeouts. You got the ball back, or you would have gotten the ball back if it wasn't for all of a sudden they decided to call holding on the last play when they didn't cover. They didn't call it all game. But that's another story. But
we want to thank you for coming on, talking about the state of the Packers. We appreciate it as always. You always give great insight to the Green Bay Packers.
Yes,
so
and
thank you for coming on.
I think we're going to be able to get you on the draft coverage on Draft Week for a little bit here and there. So we'll see where that goes. And honestly, as the gentleman that you are, I think it would be nice, being that I lost money on your football team in that game, that you buy me a Star Wars. I think it's only fair. It's probably just a nice gesture.
Don't blow up his head too much, though.
So
I appreciate it, guys. It's nice getting back on.
Absolutely.
Yep. Good seeing you, Hoff. Take care, buddy.
Right. Take care, fellas.
Green Bay Packers. There he is. Joe Thompson.
Just like that.
I just pulled a magic trick. I just pulled a magic trick. I was trying to actually get you on there. Joe Thompson coming on to talk a little Seattle Seahawks with us tonight. Joe, how the hell are you?
I'm doing well. How about yourself, guys?
How the hell are you? Did you just
listen? I spend 10 hours a day. We're exactly where I am right now. My mileage of my car is low. It's just
that's your own fault. Go on vacation or something.
It's the world we live in. So, Seattle Seahawks 12-4, won the division. They did lose to the Rams in the wild card round. I would be remiss if I didn't start off with the question that everybody has in regards to Seattle. There's been a lot of smoke this offseason around Russell Wilson. So 2 questions in regards to that. One, what do you make of it? Like, how much legitimacy do you think is there? And like, how much of it's just a bunch of BS? But also, Dan Patrick had reported that the Bears allegedly offered 3 1s, a 3, and 2 unnamed roster players. That's never been confirmed or denied, and it probably never will be. If that was the deal, would you have taken it? So kind of two parts on that.
All right. Well, as you guys know, the offseason tends to be pretty dull unless there's a hot story that the media tries to really push. And, this year it was the Russell Wilson potential trade debacle, for lack of a better term. I do believe there's a lot of frustration on his end. As you guys might know, as a lot of your viewers, he is the most hit quarterback in the league over the last 5 years. He's on pace to beat Brett Favre's record of 525 hits / sacks in half the time. Brett Favre played for 20 plus years. Russell Wilson's been in the league for 9. So that's a problem. And for him to voice frustration as much as the organization didn't like the way he did it, I think is very warranted. With that said, that was the story that the media took and ran, that he wanted out. And I think it was really blown out of proportion. But I also think it opened up opportunities for teams to inquire like they did and do their due diligence, for lack of a better term.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that kind of snowballed into something. And every time it came up, his agent had given a list of teams that if the Seahawks were willing to pull the trigger for it, he would go with it. But I don't think there was initially any want of him to want to get out of Seattle. I think he wants input. I don't think he was happy with the Schottenheimer firing, and I think that had a lot to do with it. It's hard because you hear all the stories on the news and you can't help but to think maybe he did want out. And could that potentially play out in the future? I believe so. I think maybe he's got, another year or 2 left on his contract before he has the opportunity to look elsewhere. So I think that potential is there. especially with, like you said, the potential, trade that the Chicago Bears might have made to get him. Hard to turn down numbers like that. Now you're asking me whether or not I would have done it. Me as a Russell Wilson fan and a diehard Seahawk fan, no, I wouldn't, because even with the 3 number ones and everything else, when you make a trade like that and you give away your marquee quarterback, that is the one position you are drafting for till you find one. So if I were a GM, you got the player you want. He's a proven winner, even though last year fell apart. I would have kept him and not have made that trade. And all my friends think I'm crazy, but I don't know. I don't think you give away your starting quarterback when he's won you a Super Bowl and he still plays at a high.
You look at this Seattle team known for the Legion of Boom, and that was their mainstay. That was, in the NFL, I've said it once, and Brian will agree with me thousands of times, you got to win with defense. And that's the way you win, is you win on defense. Now, this secondary is obviously long removed from the Legion of Boom. Guys retired. Griffin has gone, has departed. You gave up a lot to get Jamal Adams. I don't know if he's panned out so far what you gave up for him, but he's still got time to get chemistry. What do they have to do? Do you think this team has to draft any kind of secondary help? Because they look a little thin in the secondary.
They definitely need help at corner. There's no doubt about it. I think their safety positions are pretty solidified. I think Jamal Adams is a great free safety. Obviously, he's not the Earl Thomas type of player where he's a ball hawk. You've seen multiple times where he's dropped easy interceptions. He has the speed, he's got the tenacity, and he's got the range. But he is more of a blitzing free safety that can roam the field and make surefire tackles. Great in coverage, but if you're looking for that guy to get turnovers, he's not the guy. But he makes up with it in other ways, because as everybody knows, their pass rush has been garbage the last couple years, and he kind of brings in that element, having 8.5 sacks this year. So they kind of give a little on the secondary end of it, but they get a little on the edge rush, being able to get into the backfield and stop plays. He's all over the place, and I'm excited to watch him. He doesn't fit that mold of a typical free safety, but he makes up for it in other ways. And Andre Diggs, I think he's kind of the enforcer of that, secondary. He's not quite as good as Cam Chancellor was, but he is very serviceable. And I think they make a nice tandem. But if you don't have anybody that can cover number one receiver, it doesn't matter how great your safeties are. So they need a cornerback in this draft. I'm not sold on Trey Flowers. Yeah. I know the guy that they picked up from San Francisco is a quality cornerback, but he's not your premier guy. So they definitely need help in the secondary. They're going to need help at the linebackers. KJ Wright's getting old. Bobby Wagner's getting old. I like Jordan Brooks, but, he still needs time to develop and get better. And I wasn't a fan of Jaron Reed signing with the Chiefs. I think that hurts. That was a big shocker for me.
Well, we've talked about this at length, and really even around the time that the deal was made. I mean, I think we both kind of thought like that is a heavy price to pay for a safety. We see multiple picks go in trades. We just saw it a couple times in the offseason, but it's not usually for a safety. And I don't know if it's because, fantasy football makes us view things differently. Again, the stats aren't there for a guy like Jamal Adams, but we said that they were going to run into some cap problems because they were going to have so much money tied up in the quarterback. I think it was Bobby Wagner and potentially whatever Adams was going to get. So Adams has one more year on his deal, which is this one at just under $10 million. There's been speculation that they may let him walk. Now, I don't think you can. Call me somebody who believes in sunk cost, but I believe in sunk cost. If you put in 2 first-round picks into a guy, I don't care if he stinks the first 2 years, you have to sign him the next time because you have to get something for your investment. And you could be totally wrong, but I'd rather find out over a period of time, not let him go somewhere else and find out that I was right, to make the deal. So, I know you spoke highly of him right before, but could you envision a scenario where they actually, after giving up 2 number ones for the guy, let him walk and not give him the money?
2 things. yes, I can see it happening because that's basically what they did with Jadeveon Clowney when they traded a high pick for him and walk the next year. Now, do I think they'll do that with Jamal Adams? No, because I think they're going to try to build the defense around him, much like they did when they drafted Earl Thomas in the first round back in 2013 or 2010. I'm sorry, I'm getting my years mixed up. So I think they're going to start that rebuild around Jamal Adams, and he's the guy they want to do it with. I think you're going to see Bobby Wagner gone. I don't think they're going to pay him. I would not be surprised if KJ Wright was gone as well. That's why they went high with the linebacker last year. So that rebuild on defense is starting, and that goes along with why I was a little disappointed that they let Jaron Reed go, because he's only been in the league, 3-4 years, and he was a pretty solid D tackle in the center of our line. So I figured, if you had youth in that position, that would be somebody that you would want to keep long term. But I think that was the issue. He wanted to stay long term, and they were only going to offer him a 2-year deal, and he didn't want that. So I think you're going to see some of those big names that have been on the team for a while start to leave.
But to that point, though, not to interrupt you, Mike, I just want to follow up on this. So you're saying right now that they're rebuilding their defense. So given that's the case, Russ is not getting any younger. And I think that that's where it's coming from, is we always say that he should be the MVP of the league every year because, my God, like, what would they be without him? Like, he does everything for them. But if they're in a situation where you're having to literally, not from the ground up, but pretty damn close to it, fix your defense, at what point is it ready for prime time? And at that point, what is Wilson? And I think that that's kind of where he's coming from too, is like, he's 32. Does he want to hang around potentially for a rebuild? Because then, is he wasting the final effective years of his career? I'm talking about Aaron Rodgers, who at 37 wins the MVP. Given the fact that Russ has taken the hits, like, I mean, that's, Mother Nature catches up, right? So, like, you've been through the wars, and you have the scars for it. I don't know what his longevity is. So, like,
reason why I was saying earlier, I wouldn't be surprised as much as I would hate to see it.
Yeah.
Him not be there in a year or two, because you got to remember, Pete Carroll's a very old school coach. He is a ground and pound, strong defense type of coach. That's what they won with back in, whatever. I don't remember.
Sure.
But when they won the Super Bowl, they won it with a great defense, and Russell hadn't really come into his own yet because they were running the ball, 60-70% of the game. So in that respect, you may see him go in a couple of years and then rebuild the defense.
Almost like use him to build it.
Right.
Like, bring in the pieces.
Like I said, as much as I would hate to see it, and I would not have made that trade, I could see that maybe happening after this year or after, 2 years from now.
Joe, jumping over to the offensive side of the ball, the line, it seems like the offensive line had their injuries, had their ups and downs this year, moving some guys around. With that said, Chris Carson, I think, had a phenomenal year considering the year before he was really hurt and everything. I didn't think they were going to bring him back, but I guess when you have Rashard Penny sitting on your depth chart, I guess you got to bring him back, who Brian's a big fan of, by the way, has a jersey at home.
Horrible pick.
Yeah. So, with that being said, with Chris Carson back and the troubles with Russell Wilson, and he's not happy because he's getting knocked down, do you think it's more than likely this Seattle team in the first round pretty much done deal takes an offensive lineman?
Well, they don't have a pick until the 56th.
No pick, yeah.
They traded that first rounder away. I think it is a surefire lock that they will either trade down for more,
trade back into the fourth,
or they will pick the best lineman available. I think this is the year that they'll do it early.
Yeah, I mean, I think you got Russell Wilson complaining about different things to that effect. I think that's going to make him happy, than knowing that they're going to try to upgrade for him. I think that makes it a little bit better. So.
Right. And listen, not for nothing, you got to protect if that's the guy that you have all your money tied into, and that's what you want it based around, you have to protect him.
Somebody said that before, Brian. I heard that before.
You mentioned money. Tyler Lockett got a big deal. A big deal, I think, not just for a receiver, but I think for, I go back and forth on him. I think he's a talented player, but like not the biggest guy, like just a different mold, if you will. Important to their offense, no question, but he got 4 years, 69. With DK up for a deal in 2 years, I kind of see some correlations to Dak Prescott. And what I mean by that is you have this non-first round guy who's getting paid next to nothing, relatively speaking, that once you finally get to when the money's coming, it just gets out of control.
Right.
Because he's making I think I saw he's making less than $2 million this year, and over the cap has his value at $17 million comparatively speaking. And you can't even dispute that number. So he's going to get paid, but with all due respect to Tyler Lockett, I think DK Metcalf's worth more than Tyler Lockett. So have they backed themselves into a corner here where now if Tyler Lockett's worth 4 and 69, well, what the hell's Metcalf worth? That kind of thing. Have they created that environment because from a comparative standpoint, so different than going to work. If I outproduce you, I should make more than you. Right. Same premise.
Well, they're definitely going to run into some issues when that time comes because, in my opinion, and I think a lot of people will agree that DK is probably going to be one of the next premier wide receivers. If not, he's kind of already there.
I was going to say he's there now.
You know who loves him? Eagle fans love him. They're really excited.
Yeah. J.D. Arcega-Whiteside. Oh, I'm sorry.
But at the same time, he's a physical specimen. I kind of view him as, and I'm not going to put him on the same level as Julio Jones because Julio has done it so consistently for so many years, but he's got that body type. He's got the speed. And he clearly has the work ethic to stay great for a very long time. So I know when that contract comes up, he is going to command top dollar. And again, I think when it comes down to it, to keep Russell happy, he's going to want to have DK in his arsenal to throw to. So he's going to be getting paid, I would have to imagine. In 2 years, if Tyler Lockett's getting 4 years, 69, he's got to be anywhere between 80 and 90 million.
Easily.
I would hope for maybe a longer term, maybe a bigger signing bonus to kind of offset it. But I think they're going to free up a lot of cash in other places to make that happen. They can't let him walk.
No.
Yeah. It is amazing the DK Metcalf story, how a lot of teams passed on him because of his injury, question marks, and things like that. And then I saw the emotional phone call with DK when he got drafted by Seattle and Carroll talked to him and everything. And, his emotion, he was just, He was one of those guys that said that even though all these teams passed on me, they're going to regret that they passed on me. And you know what? He's proven everybody wrong. But yeah. So with that being said, the last question I have for you is, getting back to the Russell Wilson, concept that he's unhappy and things to that effect. So with that said, does Seattle kind of make a bold move and kind of think a little bit down the road here, and maybe in the, third or fourth round, maybe look to see if they can get a quarterback in here to kind of learn behind Russell Wilson, and something happens down the road, they're prepared for this, or do they just kind of stand pat for now?
I think they have to stand pat for now just because they don't have the draft capital to do that with the 4th round pick that they have. Mm-hmm. There's other areas where they need to address, whereas maybe next year when they have more draft picks, maybe they can work something out where they'll draft someone that can maybe learn behind him. But I don't think they waste a pick on a quarterback this year, not with only 3 picks. I think there's too many other positions that they need to worry about where they could do that.
Okay,
and to do it cheaply too. That's the other thing is when you're up against it, that's it's really what the rookie deal is so valuable. Is that we talk about these guys getting traded for ones, and it's well, yeah, but you also get the guy on the rookie deal.
Right.
To go back to the Amari Cooper trade to Dallas, the guy's worth a 1st round pick, but the point was, you draft a guy, you're getting 4 years of no money, and that's the valuable piece. Yeah. My last question for you. It was a weird year for Seattle where it was almost the yin, the yang, right? Where they started out completely on fire offensively, but just were an absolute dumpster fire defensively. And then right around that loss to Buffalo, everything kind of flipped in that the offense kind of was sputtering a little bit, but then the defense, the rest of the way, only allowed 20 points twice in the last 8 games. So everything kind of averaged out, as weird as that kind of felt because of how good the offense was to start the year. Do you take solace that the defense can do that? So maybe it's not everything is crumbling, or do you take it well, what happened to my offense, and should I be more concerned about that? What the way the year ended, the playoff game was just weird to me. Like, it was just like, I don't look at it like I'm shocked that they lost. It was a divisional game and shit happens in divisional games, but just a weird game. Like, I thought they would find a way to win it, and they really weren't overly competitive throughout it. Just LA had their number. But the way the year went, like, what do you take from either side of the ball from what you saw?
I'll be perfectly honest with you. To watch the offense and its struggles the second half of the year was very hard. It just seemed that whatever they were doing in the beginning half of the year, it's either the defense figured them out and they never changed anything, or I really believe the hits finally got to Russ and he just wasn't the same quarterback he was in the first half of the year. Because if you watch through some of the games, he just looked lost. Even when he was scrambling, he would turn every which direction, which he's notorious for doing, but he wouldn't commit to the run. He was constantly looking downfield, which has played out to his benefit. But there are times where he just needs to be confident in himself and go and not worry about tossing the ball, because there were so many plays that I can remember, just not specifically, but just in general, where if he would just take it and run, he would have got 10, 15 yards, no problem. But he's looking downfield and he's taking hits that he doesn't need to do. And I don't know if that was the play calling, where, you know, the routes or the defense had it figured out and the guys weren't just getting open in time, and he would get too nervous and then kind of take off a little bit. But I'm more concerned with the lack of production out of the offense than I am the improvements on defense, because the defense in my eyes, and losing Shaq Griffin and losing Jaron Reed are going to hurt. So I don't know how that's going to play out into this season, but I'm confident that they'll be able to keep them in the game, even without those two guys. And on a side note, I'm glad they didn't overpay for Griffin, because he was a good cornerback, but not worth the money that Jackson gave. But going back to my point, I think the defense will be enough to keep them in the game, but the offense is going to have to score the points, and they've shown they can do it. So I'm hoping, having brought in this new offensive coordinator, maybe he'll be more willing to give Russ more input, which is what he wants. And they'll be able to get back on track to how they were the first 8 weeks of the season. But the offense is definitely my main concern, and it starts with the offensive line.
Joe, we want to thank you for coming on and talking Seattle with us. You're always, very knowledgeable about your team, and you always give us great comeback answers. So we appreciate coming on.
And I think they're in a tough spot. I mean, you could make the case that's the best division in football, top to bottom. Yeah. I think that's the people that we're looking for them to move on from Russ. I think are looking at the totality of the situation. His age, the way the team is, money coming up, and everything else around them, and saying, like, it becomes a lot to ask. And they won the division last year. Full credit to them.
In 3 years, it's flipped upside down.
I mean, you have to assume the Niners will be back, or at least better than they were. I think Arizona is like the next team to maybe take the next step, and then the Rams got better. So it's tough. Like, that's the thing. Like, you could really make the case that any of the 4 teams win the division, and the 4 teams finish last. It's wild, but it's true. Like,
there's good football to watch. I know that.
Yeah, for sure.
Guys, thanks for having me.
No, absolutely. Of course.
Joe, thank you very much. We appreciate it.
Have a great night, guys.
You
Take
too.
care. Joe Thompson with Seattle Seahawks.
Yeah.
And, again, to just not to belabor it, but it is such a tough division. Like, I hear where he's coming from. Like, I don't want to give my quarterback away, but I mean, at what point do you build? At what point do you start over? Because, like, it's, time's against you.
Yep.
So,
I agree. Like you said, that division's wide open. I mean, in 3 years, that division went from Seattle just running away with it every year to, man, anybody can win this division now. So you got John Lynch, who's done a great job in San Francisco drafting. You got the Rams, who, like you said, have gotten better with Matthew Stafford there now, and maybe get some continuity. They got Cam Akers back there, running back. I mean, they're pretty much ready to go. And I know they Cardinals signed Connors today from Pittsburgh to mix up with Chase Edmonds. So, I mean, they'll be better a little bit too defensively. So it's definitely going to be interesting.
Well, last but certainly not least, we have you.
Oh, hey, should you take me off and bring me back on, or
you want me to do that?
No, that's fine.
All right. Tampa Buccaneers with our own Mike Galleta.
Hey, All right. It's a weird pick this year for me because I'm usually picking in the top 10. So.
Hey, they won the Super Bowl.
That's right.
How bad can it be?
Yeah.
How bad can it be?
Nope.
So you look at what they've done in the roster is pretty much basically intact. And I think that speaks to, that's the Brady effect, right? Because like these guys wanted to run it back. They wanted to come back and defend their title. Shaq Barrett, Donovan Smith, Levante David, Gronk, Fournette, some others, they're all back.
Giovanni Bernard. Yep.
How surprised were you that they were able to get that done?
I was stunned because we talked about it, who they were going to try to get rid of. I didn't think Shaq Barrett was coming back at all. They had to sign Levante David, and some other guys, Jason Pierre-Paul's up next year. But these guys, like you said, Brian, I mean, Mike Evans came out, I think, a week after the Super Bowl and said, I'll take less money if we can get the guys together. I'll defer money. So that just shows you the respect they have for Brady. I mean, Brady came in the first practice of the year and made a statement in the meeting. He said hi to everybody. He said, listen, I'm just going to say everything right now. If we do any kneeling or that, this is over. I'm done. And they respect him enough to say, you know what? Done. They know the track record. They know what he can do. Proved it this year. And there's even more respect for him in the locker room. I am really shocked they got everybody back. I mean, it's great to see the gang's all back and they're ready to make another run. And we said it before the show that they're going to go as Tom Brady goes. I mean, as long as he could ride this ship out, no pun intended. Yeah. They're going to keep trying to win, keep that window open.
Very much a destination team. It hasn't always been that way. I mean, again, that's the Brady effect. I mean, that is what it is. So I'm both surprised, but not surprised that, people check their egos and were able to, make it all work there. The one guy who didn't get a big deal is Chris Godwin. So he's back on the franchise tag. He seems like he's publicly fine with it. Like he's not pouting. He's not complaining. And it happens so often with guys on the tag, right? So do you have any concern that at some point he might be the odd man out, that they're not going to be able to lock him up long-term because money's money, there's a cap, you can't go over it, where the long-term money is just not there because it's been spent everywhere else?
I think the only way Chris Godwin leaves his team is it's easy to say, but they win another Super Bowl. If they win another Super Bowl, he'll have 2 rings, and he gave a lot to this team last year, some big catches on this team. I mean, everybody wants to say the Antonio Brown signing put them over the top, but really Antonio Brown didn't have a lot of catches down the stretch. It was Chris Godwin that really, especially in that Packers game when we had Hobb on, that he really came up big. I think the only way he leaves is if they win another Super Bowl, then the 2 rings are out of the way, and you're going to go get that big contract. I think he's happy playing with Tom Brady, and I think they could lock him up long term. I think next year or the year after. I think it's definitely in the cards for him to stay a Buccaneer. I
mean, I think in many ways he's really the number one.
Yeah, absolutely.
Mike Evans, who really up until recently, really hasn't gotten the respect he deserves as the elite number one guy, just because it's been Jameis Winston and, a bunch of garbage throwing him the ball. So, I mean, it's not nothing he could control. But, Godwin's kind of come out of nowhere, and he was that 1B. And honestly, I could really make the case that he is their number one guy right now. And Brady loves him, but that's Brady. He may have to check his ego too at some point. Again, the cap's going to go up. So I think that, some of this will be, fixed by just that. But he's one that I don't necessarily think that if he gets one more ring, he's going to go. I think he'll stay as long as Tom stays. And I think that's, there's much to be said about succeeding in the league. You'll get your money.
I think Godwin and Evans complement each other very well. It's almost like an Irving Harper thing back in the Dallas days when they were there.
Well, maybe not the way they are.
Yeah, well, maybe not to that extent, but I mean, you know what it is. If Evans isn't the main guy that's focused on, he makes really big catches, and you maybe don't see that he's getting, all the catch kind of like Mike Thomas does in New Orleans, but he doesn't have to. When you got a guy like Godwin, and the Bucs are seeing that with a guy like Tom Brady, when you spread the ball out like he does all over the field to Gronkowski, to Evans, to Godwin, everybody's happy, everybody's winning, everybody's moving forward. They got a great continuity in the locker room. Yeah, and that's what they want to do. And I think Mike Evans is understanding that he doesn't have to be the main guy in this offense. He just has to bring him and make catches.
The one guy name who's not signed is Antonio Brown.
Yeah.
Now he was a guy obviously added late in the year, totally because Tom wanted him, and Tom gets what Tom wants. It's fine.
Yep. Yeah.
But he is somebody who is currently not under contract. It is a money thing for him. Do you view him as they got to figure out a way to do it, or are you okay letting him move on?
I'm okay with letting him move on for what the moves they made this year and how they got this team, 95% back together. I don't see a big need for Antonio Brown right now. Again, he may have had some catches big and he scored some touchdowns when he first came in the team. And everybody's saying, oh man, they're loaded down all, but again, the way Tom is, the way he spreads the ball around to different guys, Scotty Miller got catches. It's everybody who's open. Cameron Brate got catches. It's just I don't think Antonio Brown is an absolute must sign. If he's going to take less money, they can get him at maybe a little bit above league minimum. I'm okay with that. But he's got to understand this team is probably cut a lot of the salary that these guys will be taking big money. He wants to come back to this team. He'll take less money. And I've also heard a rumor, which I'm still kind of baffled at it, that even though Edelman announced his retirement yesterday, Gronk came out in a tweet and on social media and said there's a 69% chance that Julian Edelman becomes a Buccaneer. So I don't know how he's going to do that when he fails a physical, but could he be the slot that Antonio Brown is vacating? You're sliding Edelman in there because, like you said, what Brady wants, Brady gets. I don't know if he's healthy enough. I really don't. I mean, I think he's had enough. No, I haven't gotten over Vita Vea.
Did you go over Vita Vea yet?
No, I haven't gotten over Vita Vea because the only reason is because if you look at that secondary, Brian, even though they drafted Antonio Winfield Jr. last year, who's a great pick, he's played phenomenal. They have Jordan Whitehead back there who's iffy at times. I mean, Sean Murphy-Bunting is fine back there. He's a very good corner. I don't like Carlton Davis there, and that's a spot I think they could have gotten somebody there. Where they struggle in the one side of the secondary. I mean, I think it's secondary is a lot better than it was 3 years ago. Believe me, when that Vita Vea pick happened 2 years ago, I was.
What I was going to say was, Chris, hang around to the end of the show. We got
we'll put it back up for everybody.
Hang around towards the end.
I was livid because as a fan, that's the time they needed a secondary, and that wasn't the move. I don't think. I mean, it was a luxury pick because they already had Nunez Roches there, and he hasn't worked out the way they thought he has, especially with Vita Vea coming in being better than him. So it's kind of worked in that sense. But yeah.
Well, from one first round pick to another,
mm-hmm.
Is there a future right now in Tampa for OJ Howard? And I say that because, look, he got hurt last year. He wasn't really getting used before he got injured.
Yeah.
Gronk is Gronk. I see nothing wrong with Cameron Brate. I wasn't shocked that they went OJ Howard. It felt like a guy who fell to them. And, I go back and forth on first round tight ends. I mean, now we'll talk about Kyle Pitts in the future. Just your read on, is there even a spot for him at this point? Is this is he going to just go because there's just one football? I mean, how's it going to work for him?
Yeah. I when they made this pick, I mean, they moved up because he fell. And I agreed at the time that when a guy like that and a tight end that he was ranked falls to you like that, you got to change course and make the tight end work. But I think the problem was they didn't make the tight end work. They brought this guy in and they gave him an opportunity in his rookie year, and he had to get the speed of the game, and he couldn't catch up to the speed of the game in his rookie year, which is understandable. But after that, second year out the window, he turned into a blocking back. And they haven't used him since. They tried to move him last year, to my understanding, and really they wanted too much for him for what they got for him. I mean, they drafted him in the top 15 in the draft that year. So yeah, and Cameron Brate, they had signed the year after they got OJ Howard to a deal. So if you're not going to use him, move him and try to get whatever you can get for him. Because like you said, Brian, he's just taking up roster space right now. I don't think especially with Gronk on the team and Cameron Brate playing as well as he is, I don't know where they could put him. They can't even play double tight.
I'm here. They don't. I don't think they're going to start going like triple tight end. Obviously, who does that, right? But I think that they brought him in. It was a different Bucs team. It was just a whole different scenario. So I don't know what his future is.
Yep.
I still think he's very talented. I mean, if Dallas was able to get him for a late round pick, I'm all in on that. That would really get me excited because I think that there's talent there.
I mean, I think they won a second round pick, or I don't think they can't get a first, but I think they won a second or third round pick for him. I don't think you're getting that. I mean,
you might get a third, maybe, but because there's just not enough tape on him now. Like there just isn't.
Correct.
The offense obviously makes all the headlines, and we obviously know why. But really, their defense was a massive reason last year for their success, up to and including the Super Bowl. They were 6th ranked in yards against. Now, we know defenses ignore the dogs. The windows are open because it's very warm in New Jersey. Is that something that you think they can keep up? Because if you go back to the playoff run, and please don't take this as me speaking ill of Tom Brady. I'm not. But the Saints game, defense won that game.
Sure.
The Packers game played a huge role. Defense won that Super Bowl for them, right? So you can talk about Tom all you want to. I'm not going to tell you not to. He's Tom Brady. But this wasn't a case like where he was with New England where like Tom carried them.
Listen, and we've said it numerous times. You look at the Super Bowl winners, they've won on defense. Baltimore, monstrous defense. This Bucs defense came on at the end of the year like gangbusters. I mean, the last 3 games of the year in a regular season, they played like there was no tomorrow. And they played like that through the Super Bowl. And like you said, Brian, in that game against New Orleans, Brady threw 3 interceptions. Okay. Right. You don't win games with 3 interceptions. That just doesn't happen. He did it twice. He did it in the Green Bay game and he did it in the New Orleans game. And both times Tampa Bay not only got it back for him with an interception, or a fumble, they got it inside the 20 and set the offense up to be successful. So that's how it's working in Tampa. I mean, this defense, this D line is nasty. I didn't think they were bringing back Ndamukong Suh, but he's back. Vita Vea, you have Golston. Pierre Paul, I'm a little worried about next year because his contract's going to be up. I think they're going to draft for need this year for his position. You brought the linebackers back. Shaq Barrett had a great year. Levante David has played well. And the secondary is well improved, especially like Winfield Jr. stepping up and being the leader back there as a rookie. So, I definitely think their defense maybe even a little bit outweighs their offense right now in the way of how they roll.
It's weird, but for the first time in forever, like it feels like this is the Bucs division to lose, and like there's a big gap, right?
Yeah.
You talk about around the league, right? You talk about, the Chiefs are going to win the AFC West. Like, and no one's going to look at you like, you're an idiot. I mean, the second best team's not anywhere close to them in the Chargers.
Yep.
I look at the division now. Look, Saints move on from Drew Brees. I guess Winston's the starter. That's not exactly confidence inspiring. It shouldn't be. No. The Panthers, I think, are still a team in transition. I did like the addition of Darnold, no question, but I think that they're still kind of working their way. And then the Falcons just look like they're doing this right now. Like, I don't think there's really a lot of plan there. We'll see what Arthur Smith does. From your vantage point, like, are you scared of anybody right now? Or like, are you like, it's not like the Yankees where like wake me up when September ends type thing, but like, does the regular season within the division even matter to you? To me, if they don't win the division, it's a huge letdown because I don't think anybody's good enough anywhere close to them talent-wise, top to bottom.
Well, sure. You look at the talent on these teams, and you look at New Orleans first of all with Michael Thomas. You have Kamara. I mean, you got guys that can run the offense. The problem is, being a Bucs fan, I know all about Jameis Winston. This is the same old record with him. I mean, 30-30 his last year with the Bucs. I mean, you can't win a season with 30 interceptions. And his problem is he gets himself in trouble, pushes the ball, and he's not that accurate of a quarterback, and that's the problem. So I'm not really scared of the Saints really at all. The Panthers, like you said, transitional period. They are going to get McCaffrey back, and he's going to be a one-man wrecking crew with Darnold. So you're going to see with Darnold with weapons now. He's got a guy who can catch the ball out of the backfield and run the show. We'll see how he does. And Atlanta, it's the same thing with Atlanta. No defense, and they have offense. They could score with teams, but they can't stop anybody. So, no, from a standpoint of, and I agree with you, Brian. I mean, if the Bucs can't win this division, even going away by 2 or 3 wins easily, I mean, that's definitely a loss, especially when they bring the whole gang back. I mean, you brought everybody back from the previous year.
I find it hard to pick them to lose a divisional game.
Yeah, no, I agree.
You know what it feels like, Mike? It feels like Brady in the AFC East. There's a lot of correlations to that.
The AFC South, and he brought everybody down from the AFC. And
all right, look, they're picking 32nd overall because they won the Super Bowl. It feels very much like a real quick here. If Brady gets hurt, are they screwed? Honestly, no.
They don't have a quarterback on their roster right now.
Yeah, but I
know
think
they got Blaine Gabbert. He's gone.
But
Ryan Griffin's been there forever, but he's not going to start.
Well, screwed mean that they're dead. I mean, they're not going to win the Super Bowl, but
dead. They're not dead, but I mean,
defense is like
hey, listen, any team that brings in a backup quarterback to finish out the year, depending on where it is screwed. I mean, that you've seen it we saw it with Dallas last year too. I mean, they were rolling a little bit with Dak, and then they, went to Dalton. He struggled to pick up the offense right away. So yeah, I mean, are they going to be less? Oh yeah. I mean, I don't know. You can't bring in a guy that's going to take over the team as good as Brady. You can't do that in a backup. So,
well, you saw what they were like. You saw.
Sure.
So we talked about Green Bay having a bit of a luxury pick. To me, this is the ultimate luxury pick because not only did you have you coming off a championship, but you brought the whole goddamn team back, right? So,
yeah.
Where do you see them going? Because to me, I look at 32 in a couple of ways. Tell me if you think I'm on point here. On point. Whatever running back is there because it's a luxury pick and it helps Tom immediately. That's the quickest position to get somebody to help you. They need nothing else. That's number one. Number two, offensive line. Number three, defensive line. So I think if you're going to go, you could go running back depending who falls, like a Najee Harris or whoever we'll see who's there, right? Mm-hmm. But they could go pass rush and get themselves ahead of when JPP moves on potentially. Or they can look at the offensive line and continue to build protection for their quarterback.
Yeah.
Your take.
Yeah, no, I kind of agree with that to a point. I mean, they did go O-line last year, which we thought they were going to do, and they got Wirfs, and who was phenomenal protecting Tom back there, keeping him upright to do what they had to do. Their offensive line actually is one of the top three in the league, which is pretty impressive, actually, with who they have at Ali Marpet, Jensen. They have a lot of guys there, Carpo. They have a lot of guys there that are solid, that have played together for a long time. So they're solid offensive line. You can always bring in some depth. I agree with that. No. Well, actually, we're going to get to that. We're going to get to that, Chris. So, and I had talked to Brian about this. He thinks I'm crazy, but I am going to be on the record as saying this. So I think, Brian, they're going to go an outside linebacker because the Pierre-Paul thing is kind of weighing over them. I mean, they did it this year. We're bringing everybody back, but I don't know what kind of money he's going to want to expect next year because he's had a really good 3 years that they've had him here now. And played really above the level. He's been a monster. And I think this could be his last big deal. So they could be losing Pierre-Paul next year. So I think the guy that they want to bring in, and I'm looking at is Penn State Jason Owa. Kid, he's got, and I got some stats here on him real quick. I mean, you talk about a kid who can really burn at 250. He's 257 pounds. He ran a 4.36 40. And the kid's a beast for Penn State. He was all over the field, and that's something they're going to need. That's something they could just reload the gun and just replace him with Pierre-Paul because even though he's got to pick up the speed of the game, it's easier to pick it up on the defensive side of the ball than it is the offensive side of the ball. So I think they're going defense in the first pick. I mean, it wouldn't shock me if they go O-line to bring in some depth. Maybe have some guys sit behind some guys for now, and then other guys move on at the end of the year. That's fine. I do think in the second or third round, probably the second, Brian, they're going to look to try to, get around maybe the middle of the second round. And I think that all rumors that I've heard so far on the Bucs site said that they're looking at my boy Kyle Trask from Florida, quarterback. And it makes sense to me because if you bring in a guy like Kyle Trask to sit behind Brady as long as he's here for and to learn behind him, the time he's ready to get in there and roll, he not only knows a little bit more of the offense, how Brady runs it, he's kind of up to speed that he's just not thrown in there. So I think it's a good deal.
Name me a quarterback who sat behind Brady that really went on to do something. You're going to tell me Jimmy G. I think Jimmy G stinks.
Matt Castle. But they became
for every Garoppolo, there's a Ryan Mallett, right? Like, I mean, there's guys who are like, oh, this is good.
Right, but if you look at the way Brady runs this offense, and Trask learns to run this offense similar to that, coming in here, they plug and play some different pieces, some different guys coming in. I'm not going to say it's going to roll the same way as Brady's doing it now, but it might not be that much of a bigger drop off.
I mean, Brady might play until he's 50.
That's fine. that's fine. And I'm okay with Trask staying behind him. Right now, they have nobody sitting in the ring.
I understand where Chris is coming from. I get it. I just, again, to me, I would have traded this pick for something. The first round pick, because I think you get that immediate help. That's why I think like you look more at guys that can help immediately. Because I've said it before. I'll say it again. I will go to my grave saying this. There's no day after tomorrow with the Buccaneers. When Brady goes, you're breaking it up. So who cares? These guys who have signed these contracts are going to want the hell out. Like you're going to have to blow it up and start over, and nobody even cares.
Right.
So I hear what the both of you were saying here. I don't disagree with your logic at all.
Mm-hmm.
I just don't think that that's the direction that I would go. But what I do know is they're probably not going to draft Minkah Fitzpatrick. Right?
The Bucs are staying here, taking a defensive back. I'm telling you, they're not moving down. I'm telling you, it'd probably be smart for them to move down, but I just hope they get Fitzpatrick and not Derwin James. The only thing that could happen is that they move down and think they can get Fitzpatrick. Is that they can move down and get Fitzpatrick.
Bucks traded to the Bills.
Traded the pick.
Yeah.
But I want Fitzpatrick. I don't want James. I want Fitzpatrick. Jesus.
Edmonds.
Damn it!
And you have a live reaction from the Bucks fan.
Manny, one pick away. You kidding me? Damn it!
How mad
you were mad.
You kind of knew that was coming though.
Shit!
When they didn't get Rosen, they had to switch up their
They're
thing.
gonna get Derwin James. Damn it!
Dude, listen.
They're
There's
taking
somebody
the
with a
deep
parrot hat on. Is this is your fan base? I'm just letting you know. There's somebody with a goddamn parrot hat on.
So they traded back to 12 to take a lineman.
Oh God! Don't say that, please.
It might be good just for like reaction purposes. This is Derwin James. Whoa!
Look at him!
Wow!
Dude.
Oh my God!
Oh my God!
Wait, we already broke 6 chairs, so that might
Oh
be
my
another.
God! Are you kidding me? Oh my God!
Yo, I'm fire! Yo, man, says fire the cannons. That's what Paul says.
Oh my God!
Fire the cannons.
Oh my God! I can't. Oh
He's
my
happy.
God.
At least Mike. At least he's happy. He's playing for him.
Oh my God! I'm gonna throw up.
I don't. He's kind of off camera right now.
Oh my God.
He's really not happy. Call it what it is. He's still the best D tackle in the draft. I mean, you can say. Yep. Are you all right?
Good?
You okay? He's so mad.
Why are you mad?
They got the worst secondary in the league. They got 2 guys there sitting there. They weren't going to give his back. You got to get Derwin James. Yeah. I'm going to start changing.
Let's see.
I'm going to have to change allegiance soon. I can't deal with this anymore.
And you wanted to change teams and they win the damn Super Bowl.
And here we are. I win a Super Bowl, and I only wish I would have been too mad about Derwin James because I think he's a great player. He just can't stay healthy. I mean,
Yeah, I mean, to your credit, at least you were looking for. I mean, they both turned out to be good. I mean,
Yeah.
Minkah, I guess, a little better than Derwin
I mean,
James. just for an injury.
Minka went to Pittsburgh and turned into a monster. I mean, he was going Miami. He turned into a monster in Pittsburgh, but it all worked out. So
Good times.
That's a great video. That's a classic.
Good times. I mean, listen, for those of you who have not been, look, the network's moving on like 5 years something now. We will have live draft. Look, draft week is going to be just wild this year. I mean, the team is up to like 24 people. We just keep growing and growing and growing. It was the 2 of us. Now it's just a huge, multinational, right? But we'll be doing the 2-night mock Tuesday, Wednesday draft week, the draft live on Thursday, the draft live on Friday. A lot of great coverage from your boys at the Sports Box. Chris Fallon, absolutely. Listen, you gotta tune in for draft night because all kinds of nonsense is going to happen when we have 9-10 guys I remember last year, I got to go find the clip of when Jalen Hurts got picked because we all lost our minds. So a lot.
I just saw Mike sitting there. They got Hurts. And we're like, what? They got Hurts. And we, like you said, we zoned out for 10 picks. We were like, flabbergasted. We couldn't even talk about pick. We didn't even know who was getting picked. So floored.
I pride myself my professionalism when I do this, and I was just beside myself because I was laughing my balls off. That's just the reality of it.
And listen, if you're not really into the draft as much as we are, you should tune in because there might be 10 guys on, and it's going to be just anarchy. It's just going to be a whole lot of sports coming at you. So buckle up and tighten up for that.
It's a metric ton of fun. Join us. It's awesome. Trust me.
You got it, Chris. Hey, always happy to make your night, pal. On my misery. That's fine.
All right. Well, that wraps up this week. Next week on the show, really 2 editions. Mike is joined by Mike Velarde at 7 o'clock. 7:30. Former Flyer Chris Tarian joins us.
Possibly Dave Cartwright. Possibly.
Okay, there you go. At 8:30, we'll be back. We'll be finishing up our States of the Teams exercise. We'll have Tony Quigley will join myself and really the two of us, and you too, but to talk about the Dallas Cowboys, better for worse. Noah Deibler from Sweet Tea will be on to talk about the Atlanta Falcons. I think that's the only 2 that we have lined up.
Heads a little bit. So
and then from there, I mean, we're 2 weeks out, guys. I mean, the drafts, it's just so much fun. Like, I just can't begin to tell you. Like, it's really the NHL drafts, the NFL drafts are my 2 favorite shows of the year to do. And
is there any possibly way Jacksonville goes brain dead and does not take Lawrence?
Absolutely not. You want to see people lose their minds?
What happens if like a number? I don't even know who's picking 6, but say 6. Oh, Miami. No,
I don't care if the Russians hack the system. It's going to be Trevor Lawrence.
So he's already got the play up enough to get the number 1.
What would it take, Mike? Mike, you're the Jacksonville Jaguars, right? What would it take for you to get out of 1?
Somebody gave me 3 1s and a 2 this year.
What's that do for you?
3 1s and
what's that do for you? They've never had a quarterback.
Say this: they're coming from number 6, and they give you 3 number 1s and a number 2 this year.
I don't think I would do that to move down to 2.
Well, what would you? If you're Jacksonville, what would you take?
Absolutely nothing.
Somebody could offer you 4 number 1s and 2 2s, and when you still
somebody calls me, hi, we're gonna offer you for number 1 of that. Fuck you.
Wow. I think there's enough quarterbacks in this draft. If you don't slip past 6, you can get a quarterback.
That's my goal.
I'm just saying. I mean, you load up. I mean, Jacksonville has needs. I mean,
Trevor Lawrence, done.
Okay, it's funny on DraftKings. It's like it's minus 10,000 or minus 100,000 for him, and then everybody else is like plus 25,000.
Because he's going to go number 1.
That should tell you right there it's not going to happen.
No, absolutely.
But thank you for watching us today. We really appreciate it.
Actually, real quick, I meant to use at the start of the show. I would be remiss if I didn't recognize, on behalf of everybody with the Sports Box, we give our heartfelt condolences to our teammate, Brandon Gazzara. There's no way anybody else knows this, but Brandon's father sadly passed away last week, and the funeral's tomorrow. And on behalf of everybody here, you catch Brandon. He's on Thursday nights with Paul. You see him on Sundays with us during pregame. He's a good kid, and heartbreaks for him and his family.
We saw Brandon and Brian tonight, and they were holding up really well. But I mean, it's a very sad time. But our brother on the Sports Box, we're there for him if he needs us, and we just want to send our heartfelt condolences out to him and his family in this tough time. So
So say a prayer for them. Whatever religion you choose to subscribe to, just pray to whoever that is for the Gazzara family.
Yeah, absolutely. So before we get out of here, though, Brian's got a little bit of catching up to do on our sponsors.
Listen, 3 things, right? Numero uno, crowd play. Check out the app. It's free. THEBOX, sign up, get 10 free points. Number 2, Showcase Sports. Check it out. Top right of the screen. If you are in South Jersey, need baseball bats, need baseball gloves, need football gear, need Under Armour hoodies, stop by there on 12th Street in Hamilton. Let them know that we sent you. And last but not least, you need a house. You want to get rid of yours? Call Dave Birnbaum, RE/MAX Community, the number 1 RE/MAX agency, RE/MAX Community in South Jersey. Call Dave. Dave will take care of you. Let them know that we sent you as well. A lot of support we have for what we do, and we love every single entity that supports what we do.
Absolutely. More shows coming tomorrow. Braceline Jumpers here, MMA shows. We got it all here on Sports.
Winning Drive continues on.
Yep. Yeah, that's right. Game Winning Drive. That's right. Check them out. If you haven't checked them out already, we will be here. Again, check us out next week. Chris Tarian. It's going to be phenomenal. For myself, Hamilton, Mike Galleta, and Brian the Ranger Attard. Thank you for watching Highly Opinionated, folks. See ya.
Thank you for watching this episode of the Highly Opinionated Show on the Sports Box. Please remember to follow us on all of our social media outlets. On Facebook at Sportsbox Show, Twitter at Sportsbox Show, Instagram at The Sportsbox Show. Find us on YouTube and join Outside the Box, our Facebook sports discussion group. The Sports Box is brought to you by our sponsor, Showcase Sports in Hamilton. Showcase Sports for the elite athlete. And also our friends over at CrowdPlay. Download the free CrowdPlay app today and use promo code THEBOX at sign up for 10 free points. Thank you for joining us.